Ms. Sanchez is recognized for questions.
Yes, I'd like to yield 10 seconds to my colleague, Mr. Thompson.
Thank you very much. I just think it was inappropriate that the gentleman from Pennsylvania suggested that some of us are enjoying the dysfunction around your speaker's election. It's beyond the pale. We came here just like all of you to get things done, and we haven't gotten anything done in the last 3 weeks. We're as disheartened by this as I'm sure the responsible members on your side of the aisle are as well. And please don't put words in my mouth or my colleague's mouth. Thank you. I'll yield back to Ms. Sanchez.
Reclaiming my time, and I couldn't agree with Mr. Thompson more. It's not fun sitting around waiting for you guys to get your act together in terms of election of a speaker. And I find it incredibly fitting that we're talking about schools and education today, because I'd like to start my remarks with a little lesson called personal responsibility. My dad, who is an immigrant with roughly a 6th grade education, raised 7 children who all went and graduated college. And all of us are public school products. Every single one of us went to public schools. And he didn't have a lot of education, but he was a really wise man because he had a lot of life lessons. And he used to say, when you make a mistake, and we all make many mistakes over the course of our lifetime, but admit it. Just admit you made the mistake. Learn from it and be better moving forward. And yet repeatedly, my Republican colleagues today have tried to lay the blame for the chaos, the inaction, and the inability for the Republicans to govern. They're trying to lay it at the feet of the Democrats. So I want to correct the record with just a few facts. First fact, it's a fact that Republicans are in the majority and that they changed the rules this Congress to allow a single member to raise a motion to vacate the speaker. That's a fact. Second, it was a Republican, Mr. Gates of Florida, who actually moved to vacate Speaker McCarthy. That is the second fact. So you poured the gasoline and you lit the match, and now you're unhappy with the outcome and you want to blame the Democrats for that? So how is it that we're to blame for a mess that you've created? We voted against the rule change, and we didn't raise the motion to vacate the speaker. You guys are blaming us because we didn't vote for Speaker McCarthy? Well, how many of you ever voted for Speaker Pelosi or would ever vote for Speaker Pelosi? It's not the Democrats' responsibility to choose your leader. That's your responsibility. You are the majority, so own your mistakes, take a long, hard look at yourselves in the mirror, and admit that you screwed up, and move on and be better. But you keep screwing up. And, you know, the statement that the chairman made at the beginning of this hearing that the Democrats are to blame for this whole chaos and mess, that is the very definition of a failure to take responsibility for your actions. But that doesn't really surprise me because it fits this pattern, a pattern whereby Republicans break things and then they try to blame someone else. So 3 weeks after House Republicans ousted their speaker and thus far have failed to elect a new one, here we are. And considering that legislative business on the floor has ground to a halt, today's hearing is hardly business as usual. Instead, the committee is discussing policies that would gut public school funding and abandon civil rights and disability protections for some of our nation's school children. Very nice. And I consider this hearing to be nothing but a short-sighted attempt to distract American families from the complete chaos that Republicans have embraced while they are in charge of this House. And this is no way to lead or to govern or to legislate. With the Republican-controlled House utterly paralyzed by your inaction, I want to look back at what the Democrats managed to achieve when we were in power last Congress with roughly the same margin of a majority. The bipartisan infrastructure law was a once-in-a-generation investment in safer and more equitable transportation and infrastructure. The CHIPS and Science Act provided billions in grants, loans, loan guarantees, and investment tax credits to rebuild America's semiconductor manufacturing capacity and bolster a domestic supply chain. And spearheaded by this tax writing committee, the Inflation Reduction Act made transformational investments in the fight against climate change. The Inflation Reduction Act is working to deliver lower energy costs for consumers across the U.S., and the law's landmark investments in clean energy are empowering American workers with good-paying jobs. Dr. Melanson, I appreciate your efforts to help the Department of Energy implement the Inflation Reduction Act. And considering your expertise leading workforce development initiatives, how specifically has the Inflation Reduction Act improved the clean energy talent pipeline? Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, but the last questioner on that side got a minute and a half over. I would like an opportunity to have the witness answer the
Sanchez,
question.
I was giving you the time. I did not take anything away. You have up to a minute 30 because the other one went a minute 30.
I appreciate that even-handedness. It's unusual, but it's appreciated.
So the Inflation Reduction Act has done a lot on generating new jobs in the variety of factors of fighting climate change. For example, the incentives for using mini splits and heat pumps has provided, training for current HVAC technicians to learn this new technology, but also provided more opportunities for trucking, transportation, warehousing of the growth of mini splits and the utilization of heat pumps throughout the U.S. Like I mentioned before, 27% growth in the EV sector of automotive. That's just from 2021 to 2022. And then also further growth in once the HALO, the hydrogen hubs have now been identified and they've been awarded through the hydrogen growth of infrastructure throughout the U.S. Hydrogen fuel cars and trucks, heavy trucks will be able to go on the road and be fueled up to meet that technology change. So that's not taking away from diesel and your standard fuels, but also is future-proofing the current fuel system that's out there to help on our carbonization goals and workforce goals as we move forward.
I thank you, and I yield back.
Mr.